Calabria, where the Calabrian Mafia or Ndrangheta started as an organization of bandits ruled under an apparent hierarchy in the 1800s. These men followed strict codes of silence, honor, and violence. As they grew, they gained respect and contracts with the likes of both the Sicilian Mafia and the Camorra Mafia by the 1970s. Around this same time, multiple wars broke out between families of the Camorra, finally coming to an end in the late 70s, but then again re-emerging in 1985. In 1991, in an attempt to avoid further fighting within the organization, a new structure was introduced as suggested by the Sicilian Mafia, La Provincia. This created a commission and made it so that any disputes between families had to be presented to this commission before any violence could take place. This is a system still in place today and saw them grow into one of the most powerful crime syndicates in Italy during the late 90s and into the early 2000s. Their recruitment method allows the Mafia to have an extraordinarily tight-knit family, as the only way in is through blood relations, with family being the most common, sons following their father's footsteps. Their reputation is one of violence, so much so that judges and prosecutors meant to prosecute members often request to be moved, avoiding confrontation with the group. The Ndrangheta were estimated to have made over 40 billion euros in 2007 alone. Much of this was obtained illegally, but then reinvested into legal businesses such as construction companies and restaurants. According to 2013's Threat Assessment on Italian Organized Crime, the Ndrangheta Mafia is among the richest and most powerful organized crime groups to have reached a global level. This is the ever-feared Russian Mafia, which stems as far back as the 1700s. In a time where most of the Russian population was living in poverty, many resorted to thievery and banditry following a code of extreme loyalty and opposition of government. When Stalin came to power, many of these thieves and bandits ended up in labor camps where the most powerful used tattoos to symbolize their roles. These are tattoos that are still used today. Eventually, Stalin became desperate for soldiers, resorting to even prisoners. Helping Stalin, though, was seen as cooperating with the government. And when the war ended and these men came back to prison, they were labeled as Sikas. This created a new war behind bars. When the USSR collapsed and the free market emerged, these former prisoner criminal bosses infiltrated Russia in all walks of life. Today, within the over 300,000 members spread across 50 countries, many have high military experience. They have made close ties with the Italian mafias and drug cartels, expanding their reach throughout the United States. They continue to thrive, gaining income by working with terrorist organizations, organ trafficking, prostitution, and drugs. In 2010, the FBI claimed Eurasian organized crime was their #1 priority, with Russia officially being branded as a virtual mafia state. The Japanese Mafia, known as the Yakuza, are different than many crime organizations in that they openly flaunt themselves to the general public and even law enforcement. They call this the omote, a front. Their ability to balance their perception and the reality of what really goes on behind that front is what has made them extremely powerful and hard to take down. Members are thoroughly tested on laws to help keep them clean and are beyond loyal to higher ups. Lower members routinely take the rap for higher ups, doing their jail time in place of them. For those who mess up, they are brutally punished by losing a section of a finger for every time that they do so. As a result of this, many have missing fingers. They are deeply embedded into Japan's everyday life, both in legitimate workforces but also in drugs, murders, and human trafficking. They are also known to help civilians in times of hardship. This makes civilian support of cracking down on the organization extremely hard for police. They are incredibly powerful, with representatives in any town with populations above 10,000, and as such are extremely influential in politics. Their power is known to sway elections greatly, meaning multiple politicians in Japan have ties to the Yakuza. The Mexican Mafia, known as La M, Spanish for M, is a highly organized criminal organization operating in the United States. Now, contrary to its name, the Mexican Mafia actually started in the United States in 1957 by 13 members. The Sureños, a group of gangs including the MS-13 and Florencia 13, along with nearly every Hispanic gang throughout the southern US, shows allegiance to the Mexican Mafia. The symbolic number 13 in their name refers to M, as it is the 13th letter in the alphabet. Made of a core group of just 150 to 300 members, the Mafia is extremely tight-knit. The only way to join is to be sponsored in by an existing member, and there must be unanimous approval of this new member. The only way out is by execution, which has to be carried out by the member that sponsored you in. Although the Mexican drug trafficking organization has existed for decades, they rose to even greater power with the demise of the Medellin and Cali Colombian cartels. Drug trafficking now makes up approximately 63% of Mexico's economy and is responsible for hundreds of thousands of deaths. Composed of multiple groups in Serbia, the Mafia was seen by many Serbs as a way out of the crushing economic aftermath of the Yugoslav wars. With active cells believed to be in the range of 20 to 30 different countries, this organization is best known for illegal gambling, drug trafficking, and arms trafficking. They are also known for some of the largest heists to have ever been committed. The Mafia formed back in the early 1970s but struggled in the coming years. It wasn't until the 90s when the Yugoslav wars erupted in Croatia and Bosnia. After sanctions were then imposed on Serbia, the economy plummeted and the Serbian Mafia thrived. Many former military and young men joined in desperation for money. Arkin was the founder of multiple groups in Serbia before becoming one of the most powerful members of the Mafia. Politicians have worked with the Mafia for favors, which has allowed them to maintain their high level of illegal trafficking and has corrupted the Serbian government greatly. By the early 2000s, the Serbian Mafia had more money than the Serbian government and was better armed than the nation's own army. This is the Albanian Mafia, made up of over 15 clans and controlling much of Albania's organized crime. One of their godfathers, Kadriovski, has been identified as the biggest heroin dealer in all of Europe. Their success lies in their roots. They are highly organized and keep to an extremely strict structure. This, along with the fact that they are almost entirely family-based, has proven to be successful, so much so that they have spread into global markets. Wherever they go, they are known for their brutality, as well as their military knowledge, which stems back to conflicts in the Balkans during the 90s. Today, members are still trained and have extensive military expertise. Their presence does not go unnoticed. They have taken over territory even from the Italian mafias, overtaking the sex trade in much of London after arriving in the UK in the early 90s and 2000s. Along with human trafficking, arms and drug trafficking remain prominent in the Mafia. While the families are small, they are strong, extremely bonded, and quick to violence. The Camorra Mafia, an organization dating back to the 1820s, is an organization that quickly evolved into a strictly structured and organized crime syndicate. Having extremely strong ties to the community, politicians began looking at the Camorra for their support to sway elections. In turn, though, the Camorra families began to use their political influence to fill government positions. They continue to use this power, their influence, and brute force today. Now, different from the Sicilian Mafia, the Camorra structure allows families to act more independently from one another. This means that if a higher up gets killed or arrested, the rest of the mafia remains intact. That, along with their code of silence, omerta, allows crimes to go often unsolved and has proven to be extremely challenging to law enforcement. The Camorra now controlled the milk and fish industries, also running coffee shops and bakeries as a front. 111 family clans exist today with nearly 7,000 members. They have grown so large that they are now the largest and most powerful mafia in Italy. Their power, not only among government but among the common people in poverty, is vital to their dominance. There is alleged to be 16 different families currently operating throughout Israel, making up the Israeli Mafia. While many heads of these groups are either in prison, have been killed, or are on the run today, the Mafia is still very alive. Involved in anything from loan sharking, money laundering, drug trafficking, and car theft, they are intertwined into government and are said to be extremely heavily armed, with both combat explosives and arms. The Mafia has gained territory internationally, specifically in the United States, where in the 1980s, the crime syndicate headed by Johnny Atias pulled the biggest gold heist in the history of Manhattan's jewelry district, getting away with over $4 million in gold. Shortly after, though, the Mafia was nearly destroyed after Atias was murdered and most of the gang arrested. However, they have again taken a hold on the US and are thought to be the largest traders in ecstasy today. The Mafia, led in large part by Dawood Ibrahim, an internationally wanted man whose criminal activities range anywhere from extortion all the way up to terrorist attacks, like the 1993 Bombay bombings, which killed 257 people and injured another 700. Ibrahim is believed to have ties to both Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. The Triads, a Chinese-based criminal organization, became a branch of a former secret society, the Hong Society. This came after the Hong Society separated, and the Qing Gang as well as the Triads were part of those who formed after. When China became a communist state in the mid-1990s, the Triads migrated to Hong Kong, Southeast Asia, and internationally into North America. The Triads quickly saw themselves left with little income and were forced to turn to extortion and drug trafficking. They live by 36 oaths that enforce extreme loyalty and a family-like structure. While an organization consisting of over 50 subgroups, the Triads today are based mainly out of Hong Kong and are involved in a variety of crime activity, ranging from counterfeiting goods, drugs, prostitution, and human trafficking. The American government estimates the Triads to be responsible for 100,000 undocumented people being smuggled into the United States annually. The Sicilian Mafia, maybe the most iconic mafia in the world, originated in Sicily, Italy during the 19th century. At the time, Sicily was long ruled by invading foreigners, and as such, Sicilians began forming groups as a means of protecting themselves from invading forces. By the end of the 19th century, these groups, known as clans or families, began enforcing their own systems of justice and ruling, eventually emerging as a private army, and groups known as Mafias used their power and the chaotic Sicily to their advantage and began extorting money from landowners. As the Italian government attempted to establish itself within Sicily, the Catholic Church, powerful officials, and even the Italian government partnered with these families to help fight violent gangs, as well as keeping civilians in line. This allowed the Mafia to gain even more power within government and politics. Secret oaths of loyalty are strong among new recruits and families whose core belief is to never seek justice for crimes from authority, but rather to come to the Mafia. After the Second World War, they overtook the construction companies and the Mafia was stronger than ever. Their empire then quickly became a major player in the 70s with the international drug trafficking. They are harsh, loyal, and powerful.